Hi, everybody. We are nearing the end of our journey of trying to figure out how a tiny seed grows into a giant tree. Part of this process, we set up an experiment. We planted some pea seeds. We put them in various locations depending on how you designed your experiment. And we now have the results. And the results for many of you were that your seeds got eaten by something outside. But I do have some data for you if that happened to you. Some of you have your own really good data because either you kept it inside or you got lucky outside and your seeds didn't get eaten. Either way, I want to walk you through finalizing this experiment and analyzing the results. If you need data, keep watching this video and I'll give you some of the class data that I did with the online students. So we set up this experiment a few weeks ago. It lasted a couple weeks. You should have already done slide 3. And by the way, we are in this one, seed germination experiment. If you click on modules, I put this in week 6, and then we'll also be taking a look at the graph today. So you should have already done this. You should have already predicted what your end graph would look like. And then we all have different data. Some of us have no data because our experiments got ruined. Whoops, that's okay. This is the data I did with the online students. And if you're an online student, this is the data. So if you need it again, here it is. You can pause the video and record this in your own PowerPoint. So we set up our experiment and we did only 2 bags. If you were in person, I gave you 3 bags with 3 seeds each. But with the students online, we had 2 bags with 2 seeds each. So where you see X's, that's where we just didn't have a 3rd seed to measure. And we only have 2 graphs, or 2 tables, because we only had 2 bags. The way that we online set up our experiment is we decided that our first bag, so this whole data table, we put in 2 seeds with 40 milliliters of water. So a lot of water. That's all this data. We measure the roots and shoots of those 2 seeds. Then in this bag, we only had 20 milliliters of water, so a little bit of water, half of the water of the first bag, 2 seeds each. The X's, again, represent that 3rd seed that we didn't have. So this is our data, and for those of you who haven't seen it, this is what the end result looked like. Our bag with 40 milliliters of water, so lots of water, and 20 milliliters of water. These are the 2 seeds that were in this bag. These are the 2 seeds that were in this bag. So that kind of gives you a visual idea of how the seeds turned out. So we have our data. Now what? We're not done. In a good science experiment, collecting the data is really only the beginning of understanding what happened. So we need to make a graph and paste it on this next slide. The way that we will do that is I've created this thing here called graph. Go to modules, click on graph, and you will get your own Excel sheet that looks like this. Now, I was feeling kind of nice, and I made it pretty easy for you to make these graphs because they make themselves, basically. So let's talk about seed bag 1. If we go back to our data, seed bag 1, we took the average of the 2 seeds in the bag on day 3. The average of 3 and 3 is, of course, 3. On day 6, they were each 8 centimeters long, pretty consistent. So, of course, the average of 8 and 8 is 8. On day 14, so a few days ago when we took our final data, the root lengths were, this first one was 16, and the root length of the second one was 12. The average is 14. The reason we take the average is because that's the only number we need to graph. That sort of smooths out our data. That way, if one got ruined or whatever, we still have that average to help us understand the final number that we need to focus on when we make a graph. So day 3, day 6, day 14, the averages of the roots were 3, 8, and 14. Well, that's really similar to the days, actually. Okay, so the average root length in our seed bag 1, and I might say seed bag 1 is 40 milliliters of water, just so I know. The average root length, and I'm not going to put cm in here, because Excel will get very confused if you put cm, because it thinks it's a word, not a number. Excel's kind of dumb. Okay, the next one was, remember the average was 8, and then the average was 14. And watch, when I do that, it makes the graph for me. So cool. Okay, also in seed bag 1, we measured our shoots, the things that go up, the green leaves. The averages were 1.5, 4.75, and 12. 1.5, 4.75, 12. Whoops, what happened here? 4.75. Look, it makes the graph for me. Awesome. So do that with your own data in bag 1, 2, if you have a bag 3. Enter in all the data. You'll get all the graphs. Copy and paste those graphs, if you can, into this slide. If for some reason it's not working, just send me a message on your graph assignment or something, and make sure to submit your graph assignment so I can see your graphs. But just this graph assignment isn't worth any points. The only reason I'm giving this to you is to make your graphs so that you can paste them into this assignment here. Then there's just some final thoughts and conclusions. Consider these questions carefully. When I graded your last one, a lot of students were just like, in the end, it was a good experiment. No, answer these questions. What's the conclusion? What does the data tell you? Which grew more, which grew less? Why do you think that happened? Was your hypothesis correct? What was the difference in growth and or color between your different seed groups, and why do you think that is? A lot of students that put theirs in complete darkness found that they were the longest roots and the longest, or maybe not the longest shoots, but definitely the longest roots. Why? Why do you think that is? We're trying to figure out how a tiny seed can grow into a giant tree, and this is helping us understand that along the way. There are just a few final questions here. Once you finish all of that, submit your assignment. Yeah, that's all. Again, you don't need to submit this graph unless for some reason you can't paste your graph into the PowerPoint here, because this is worth 0 points. See, I just gave it to you so that you have access to edit your own and make your own graphs. I think that's it. This was kind of a fun experiment. Sorry for those of you whose seeds got eaten, but we still have good data that you can use. And again, that data, if you want it, is here. Pause the video and record it as your own. And here, the 20 milliliter bag. Pause the video, record it as your own. I think that's it. Any questions? Send me a message. Bye-bye.